day 3 enhanced risk in December for Alabama ever. That just kind of shows you how rare it is to have this much confidence for severe weather this far out this time of year, even down here in the deep south where we would expect to see severe December. So the fact that the experts over at the Storm Prediction Center have this much confidence is definitely something to note. And it does look like we're going to have a widespread severe weather outbreak tomorrow, with the main threats being damaging winds and large hail, and of course, we run the risk of seeing some potentially strong EF2 or greater tornadoes. The hardest hit areas right now look to be around Jackson, Monroe, and Hattiesburg, but the slight risk goes from East Texas all the way over into like Birmingham, Alabama, and that area. Marginal risk goes all the way up here towards Knoxville, Tennessee, but really the main threat is going to be right in here around that enhanced risk. And yes, it is driven by a 10% hatched risk of tornadoes, which means that it's very likely that we'll be live throughout the majority of the day tomorrow. So make sure you have notifications on and you're ready for that. This means that we have a 10% probability of seeing a tornado within 25 miles at any given point in that yellow area there. And the hatched dotted line indicator means that the Storm Prediction Center is assuming that at least some of those tornadoes will be strong enough to produce EF2 damage. The brown's 5% and the green is 2%. And it doesn't stop there. We have a continued severe weather threat on Sunday, December 29th, as a slight risk is being drawn here from Atlanta, Macon, all the way up to southern portions of Virginia, east of the Appalachian Mountains. So we're going to have another day of severe weather with winds, hail, and maybe some isolated tornadoes over here in a place where it is actually a little bit more unusual to see severe weather this time of year. So I'm not sure if we'll be covering this live. I don't know if it's going to be as intense as what we expect to see tomorrow, but we are definitely going to keep you updated on this here as we go forward. All right, this is what the radar could look like today.
How may I aid you?
Eastern, you can see our rain showers and isolated thunderstorms stretching from the Ohio Valley down through the Tennessee Valley, Dixie Alley, all the way down to the Gulf Coast. The farther south you go, the stronger those storms are going to be. Marginal risk for severe weather today down here near Pensacola, up into southern portions of Alabama. Nothing too much to write home about, though. And
File your taxes 100% free in the app if you didn't use us last year. Just file with TurboTax Do-It-Yourself by February 18th. All tax forms and tax situations. Make the switch to TurboTax Do-It-Yourself and file free by February 18th.
No masterpiece. 10 bad babs and they after me.
Bot Rix has correctly joined the channel.
So I did the first one. I said to myself, right, I'm going to do one of these things. I'm going to do one tier list and I'm allowed one top 10 list. And I'm not going to do any more of that clickbait yet. Because, you know, I am obviously a serious YouTuber and I don't want to make just, you know, top 10s. I don't want to become Watch Mojo. That said, having done the first list, everyone's now making me do a second list, so you know I'm giving into peer pressure, which everybody should always do. Always give into peer pressure, do exactly what people tell you to do, never become an individual. Jokes aside, yeah, season 1 3v3, ooh, okay. I suppose as with before, we'll start with just some caveats, some explanation of how I'm doing this. Number one, I'm assuming that everybody has good gear. We're at the end of season 1 gear wise, everybody's got all their gladiators, everyone's got all their honor shit. We're not doing the beginning of season 1 because that's going to be a complete utter mess. And season 2, second thing, there we go, I can talk English. Second thing is, I'm going to assume that people are using optimal races. We haven't got any night elf hunters here, we haven't got any night elf priests, we haven't got any night elves, period. You know, we haven't got Draenei shaman, etc, etc. You can argue in the comments if you think I'm being shit about that, but no, we've got optimal things. So we've got undead RMPs, we've got dwarf priests, we've got human rogues, we've got gnome warriors, etc. And the next thing I would say is This list is by no means definitive. 3v3, you can basically take, one of the great things about 3v3 in particular, is you can basically take 3 good players, they can be playing any class, and they will get to 2k. You know, it might take them a little bit of time, they might drop a bit here or there, but they can get to 2k rating in TBC quite comfortably playing 3v3. It's an incredibly open bracket, you can do some really crazy shit and make it work. 2v2 comparatively is limited, stale and boring. Don't play 2s, play 5s, play 3s. These are the good fun fucking comps to play. Let's get into it. Okay, starting off with something a little bit spicy. We've got, so someone in the last video suggested to me that I put the talent of each class next to it. I kind of tried a little bit with that. I thank you for the idea. I did try, but I found it quite tricky to effectively create that into a single icon that worked. So this is kind of what we're stuck with, unfortunately. So I will explain at least the talents before placing them. And we will start, here we go, and we will start with Resto, Discipline, Hunter. Now, it can also be done with a Feral as well, or a Shadow Priest likewise. It's a really versatile comp. I'm going to put it in the B tier. The reason for this being that it lacks some of the toys that it needs to make it really truly great. So in Season 1 there won't be Earlobe, which is a spirit trinket. You pop it and you gain a load of spirit. Priests use that in this spec in combination with Innovate, so what you'll find is the druid will be controlling, the hunter will be dealing damage and burning and controlling, running through traps, and the priest will be mana burning, etc. The priest will burn a lot of their mana very quickly, so what they can end up doing is they'll pop the trinket and get innovate from the druid, because the druid doesn't have to innovate himself, he'll innovate the priest, and yeah, so this team was made very famous by a couple of guys called Hydra, Beastie and Churez. Season 1 in particular is going to be a bit of a monster. Season 1 in particular is MLS. Here we go. MLS, I think in Season 1 in particular is going to be a bit of a monster. I'm not going to put it up to A, but I am going to put it, sorry, up to S, but I'm going to put it up to A. I'll explain this comp a little bit, and you're probably going to see some biases from me when it comes to Shaman comps. MLS works with a Destro Warlock and a Arcane Mage, and normally speaking, if you had either an Arcane Mage or a Destro Warlock or a Shaman in a 3s team, you'd instantly focus one of those 3. When you have all 3 of them, you can't focus all 3 of them, you have to let at least 2 of them be doing their shit. And if you let a Destro Warlock or an Arcane Mage do their thing, then they are very, very dangerous, especially when you then give them Bloodlust. So you'll have Shadow Furies going down in tournament. Good old trusted Druid Lock Rogue, very solid A tier comp. Always going to be solid. Not the best, but very, very solid. Roguelock Priest, A tier. Roguelock Priest is the new RMP. I believe this is a controversial statement, but I will say it. I think on paper Roguelock Priest beats Rogue Mage Priest. All things equal, I do think it does on paper, very slightly, but I think with the influxes of mages that we see in TBC, current TBC live, Private Realm is the meta is very anti-mage. I don't know why, it just is. It's very pro Warlock, very anti-mage. I'm sure we'll see a renaissance of the RMP, and I'm excited to see what people do with it. Druid Lock Rogue, Druid Mage Rogue, sorry. This is just solid. And then we come to the godfather of all comps, RMP. RMP will always be good. It will be good in every expansion. It'll be good in every iteration of this game. It'll always be bloody good. There's just so much synergy naturally between these classes. The way they play together, it's just fucking fantastic, and it's an absolute pleasure to win. Pleasure to win, and pleasure to watch. A tier is gonna. I think Shadow RMP is going to be quite prominent in Season 1, and I put it at A tier. I think it's going to be fairly solid. And here come some biases for me. A tier Shadowplay. I think Shadowplay is probably A tier in pretty much all seasons. I think Shadowplay, so Troll Shadow Priest, UA Warlock, Restoration Shaman. I think it's a pretty solid team at every level of the game. It struggles a lot against RLP in particular, so it's quite tricky given current meta, but just does badly against Warlocks in general, really. And if you haven't noticed, there's quite a few Warlocks. It's a running theme of this. But yeah, I think Shadowplay is A tier, and again, I think Shatterplay as well, solid A tier. Shadow Priest, Frost Mage, Shaman, solid A tier. I think it can beat most comps fairly handily. Does very, very well against warrior teams. And yep. Then we've got Turbo Cleave, solid B tier, I think. So this is Hunter, Enhancement Shaman, Druid. This team can be a nightmare to deal with, and you can play against it, beat it 10 times in a row, and then you'll lose to it. It's a very, very strong team, particularly with PvE gear. This is the kind of team that is going to fluctuate depending upon what gear people have access to. If they've got all of the best PvE gear in the game, you know, Illidan bow and things like that on the Hunter, then they will do significantly better than if they're just playing with standard just PvP gear. So, you know, it's a bit of a PvE comp, but what are you going to do? Then we have WLD, A tier. WLD is really good against most of this stuff, but gets destroyed by Shadowplay, specifically in Season 1. Shadowplay, I think, does pretty well against it. It's, you know, it's a tricky one. And then we have Mage, Priest, Warrior. This team can just do well. It's got a Mage, it's got a Priest, it's got a Warrior. You know, it's not bad up there. And I didn't want to include
play. But what we started with your baby. Let's. What about what are you feeling?
Season 1, Lock Rogue is S tier. 100%.
You reckon?
I
Okay.
do. I think it really can beat every comp. I don't think it has one hard counter. Say there's like a decent learning curve with it. So I would say it's not the easiest comp to play because unlike healer DPS, like you can make a lot more mistakes and win games. With Lock Rogue and I would say a lot of double DPS teams, you have to minimize your mistakes and like keep CC chains to win and again this is at a higher rating. Maybe this is the case at like medium. I don't know exactly how the ladder is gonna be, but like 1700 to 2000 rating maybe.
I'm quite content with that. I think yeah, I was gonna S A something like that. But well, we started with your baby. Let's jump to mine. Good old warrior shaman. Well, my immediate thought was maybe B. I mean, I've been quite impressed. I don't know how much you've played against it on the beta, but I've been quite impressed actually.
Yeah, I mean, again, shamans obviously get the rep for being like one of the worst healers in TBC, and I think they are at a disadvantage for sure. But it doesn't mean you can't like do well with them. And like you said, specifically warrior shaman is pretty solid.
Yeah, I think on the beta with the gear that you have, Deep Thunder into people that have got sub 300 resilience in certain cases, and their clothies. I mean, you can just absolutely hog smash people. In a tournament environment, you will just get completely ruined. But I think on the ladder, you can do pretty well. So I'm thinking B. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I would say a B. I mean, I would say if RNGesus is on your side, you can randomly just win games by just like two-shotting people. So
yeah, man. Well, got B, and then well, what should we do the big one? Should we do the Mage Rogue? I'm fairly sure we can probably both agree where this is gonna go.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, D tier.
I would say F. Horrible, horrible
its
twos
own
comp.
little bracket of No, so I think it's it's gonna be
S tier, without a doubt. Especially season 1, Rogue Mage is S tier.
Yeah, I mean the broken Nova as well. I mean they keep on telling us that it's been fixed or it's getting fixed. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see if that's the case.
Well, I spoke to Riva at the tournament, and I think he was saying he still felt pretty OP. But you know, you're only getting 3 Ice Lances off now rather than 5.
What makes Rogue Mage so so good is how well the classes synergize together. And that's why you get a priest and play RMP in 3s too, and it's S tier in 3s as well. The CCs, all the bursty cooldowns, they just go together so well as a class.
Well, we've played quite a bit of Shaman Lock into Mage Rogue, haven't we? And well, to be fair, we kind of fuck them up. I think Mage Rogue against Shaman Lock is quite oddly favoured. Actually, I'd probably say.
Yeah, it's one of those weird counters actually that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
But TBC has a lot of those. Like some random, for example, Lock Rogue actually really struggles versus Holy Paladins, like Holy Paladin DPS team.
Really? Man, I did not know that.
But there's so few of them that we don't have to worry about it.
Well, yeah. So going back to the cold snap and preparation, I find I don't know how it is with playing double DPS, but certainly playing sort of healer DPS, it's always like the second wave, if that makes sense.
Yep.
That gets you, and obviously, well, one of the big ones we actually talked about this in the tournament. Line being 1.5 minutes and Trinket being 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, good players will be able to premeditate the cooldown coming back and play defensive and do what they can to counter it. But a lot of the time, you don't even realize it's happening. And if you live long enough for when blind comes back, you just win the game. Because it's just a free 30 seconds of CC, just blind to do a stat after they've already trinketed. It's so overpowered, actually.
Like jumping along, going to Hunter Druid. Now this is, see, to my mind, I think Hunter Druid in season 1 is just going to struggle a little bit. I don't know that they've necessarily got all of the tools they need that really makes the comp, really strong.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's still good, and it still does very well versus rogue healer teams in particular, which you'll see a lot of. Like Rogue Priest, for example, it does very well even in season 1 against. But yeah, the issue is druids in general, season 1, don't have the same capability of surviving as they do in season 4 and just outlasting teams. And I think it's specifically a season 1 and maybe early season 2 issue for druids. And
yeah. I keep on meaning to speak to Gucci about it because I'm curious. Because to my mind, in season 1, especially given that we have got the the 2.3 mechanics where healing is converted to spell power. Part of me thinks that druid should, in season 1, maybe go for the Restokin spec, go for the the aggression rather than, as you said, trying to play this outlasting game that they're just not very well built for in season 1. So where are we thinking? Where are we going to put it? I mean, I think B, maybe. I don't know. That's my.
I think B here. I think it's
a letter
still a
from
good
Darsok. I have not heard from him in many years. So the last of the blood feathers are dead, eh?
Where do we reckon Warrior
That is
Druid,
good
then?
news. I can remember when my friend
Warrior
Rokan
Druid
went with that
season 1
crazy
it's a
Moknathal
very
to kill
interesting
her
comp.
older sister.
So again, this comp
to be young
every
again, like you.
season gets better.
Oh,
and
how
better and
happy
better.
these little woodland nymphs shall be.
Season 4,
We'll
but
make
season
them
1
feel
is
right at home with this special concoction.
Again, it does have some teams that it can play very well against, and 2 good players are gonna still make it work. But it's very squishy. Druids and Warriors are both very squishy season 1.
So the big one is where are we going to put it? Because are we going to put it as low as B?
Yeah, I would say B tier again.
And we're saying Warrior Druid is as good as Warrior Shaman. I think we might get some comments about that one.
Yeah, I mean we should just If we were to please all those people, we'd put every shaman comp at F tier. So.
Okay, well, you pick one then. What you reckon? What are you fancying?
Let's see. How about Rogue Priest?
Well, are we talking Shadow Priest or are we talking Discipline Priest? Because
Let's
there
go
is both. There is both.
Yeah, I mean, let's just go both. I think we can start with Disc Priest because that's gonna most likely be a more common one, season 1.
Yeah. Well, I think. I mean, I think it's either gotta be a very high A or an S in my opinion.
So I personally would. I think Rogue and Priest are another one, or like two of those classes that again synergize extremely well together, just like Rogue Mage 1, where I believe Disc Priest in 2s is at its best in season 1.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. Yeah, I think for I've spoken about a few times sort of on the channel when I've been streaming and casting. Yeah, I think for a variety of reasons, Discipline Priest is just leaps and bounds ahead of every other healer in season 1. Okie dokie, well, we will go S tier, and then, well, Shadow Priest Rogue. I mean, I'm again feeling S tier. I really like this comp in, season 1, season 2. As you said, until you get the Battle Masters trinket.
Yeah, I would say the thing that keeps them from becoming S tier is Shadow Priest survivability. Especially in season 1, they're squishy. They don't really have any good defensives, and a lot of the times, like, teams are just gonna zug the Shadow Priest and successfully win because of the squishiness of Shadow Priest.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I mean, in the tournament recently, I don't know if you saw the Shadow Priest matches. He literally wasn't. There was at least one of them when he didn't even start in Shadow form. He was like, "There's no point. I'm just gonna basically be a Gimp Healing Priest."
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, for this case, we'll go Shadow Priest Rogue, solid A tier. And then, well, I suppose speaking of Duo Tarkleaves, shout out to Cargos by the way. DPL, so Discipline Lock.
Yeah, I think S tier season 1. I think this is a sleeper, like potentially like best comp there is out there season 1.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been more and more impressed by every time I played against it. I can remember the first time I played against it. For some reason, I had it in my head that someone was going to die much quicker than they did. They just refused. The comp is just so survivable. So tanky for 2 clothies.
And what makes it even better too is if you're a Troll Priest, which I think is the best for DPL. Hex of Weakness, it's a debuff that you put on your enemies that reduces the healing by 20%, so you effectively have like a mini MS effect. And dots are extra good season 1 because of the lack of resilience, so teams will just be running from you the entire time because you're putting so much pressure on them.
Well, I will throw it up to S tier, so we've got that done. But okay, let's go for something a little bit memey. Enhancement, Resto Druid.
Yeah, so again, like, if you're playing a Shaman, you're going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage, but I think this is probably the best Enhancement Shaman 2's comp you can play. And I would say, again, it's at its weakest in Season 1. It gets better every season, but I would say it's a very average comp.
In Season 1, I think you've got to just do turbo aggression, go for the Gibbs type thing. And as a result of that, I'm thinking C, just because I don't think that it's particularly reliable.
Yeah, I would say C tier as well.
Okay, so what would you like to? What should we go for next then? In reality, mate.
I think we should go Rogue Druid.
What, Feral or what? Let's do both, shall we? Should we start with
Let's
Resto?
Do both,
then?
yeah.
Okay.
Let's start with Resto and go Feral, yeah.
Well, I think we've sort of pointed out quite a few times now that we feel that Druids in Season 1 are a little bit underwhelming. But this is a monster comp later in, but Season 1, I mean, maybe a very average A tier. I don't know. I've just not seen it played, to be honest, on the beta. It's one of the ones that seemed very sparse.
I would still put it A tier because of how well these classes mesh together again. I think, like you said, it becomes the best comp in the 2s bracket that you can run later on. But I would still say it's A tier. But it does have its problems season 1. The Druid's overall survivability is weak in season 1, and that's where it really, that's its biggest strength, is the ability for the rogue to peel for the druid, and the druid to be able to outlast teams. And then also their CC working so well together. Being able to potentially sap out of cyclones, when you're playing other druid teams, being able to root the DPS and the rogue to cripple the other one. There's so much CC potential with this comp still.
I mean, I think this is a prime candidate for Restokin in season 1. I think, using the burst that you can get from that, using the the dream state, so getting that mana regen, and yes, you don't get feral charge